Welcome to Glow State. I'm your host, Courtney Page. As a former executive recruiter, career coach, actor, and yoga teacher, I'm demystifying how people have designed the creative career and life that was meant for them, and how you can too. Now, for this week's episode, let's get glowing. Okay, welcome to Glow State. Our guest today is my favorite modern-day Renaissance woman, one of my best friends and creative partner, Aixa Mastrangelo. Aixa is an actor, writer, photographer, dancer, marketing professional, podcaster, entrepreneur, wife and mother, Colombian immigrant, and Ivy League grad. She is in a constant state of growth and embodies the essence of perseverance and grit. Her multifaceted perspective on life and career is evident in all of her professional and personal endeavors, notably her new birth and family photography business, Gaia Studio. Hi, Aixa. Welcome to Glow State.
No one should have to listen to their own thing because
I'm forcing people to. That actually is good. So I actually want to know, what is your dinner party answer to when someone asks you, what do you do? Who are you? I mean, nobody at a dinner party is like, who are you? But when they ask you, what do you do? What is your go-to response now?
I don't like that question ever because I think as somebody who is, I guess what you would say like a jack of all trades, I really connect more with the master of none part of that. I feel like I've tried so many different things because I'm so passionate and inspired by so many different things. And most of them are around storytelling. So just basically dabbling in a lot of different mediums. But I don't think that I've been able to stay with one long enough to really feel like I'm an expert at it. And that's one of the things that I'm focusing on in this season of my life is to really focus in on one thing. So I think when people usually ask me that question, I would say what my day job was because I would be really insecure about saying I'm an artist or I'm an actor, because usually the follow-up question to that is if you say I'm an actor, oh, what have I seen you in?
Yeah.
And that is just the most excruciating question for an actor because if you have a couple credits or something like that, you could say that, I'd be like, I had one line on Law and Order, but then it's just immediately, it's I feel like I have to qualify it. I wouldn't just say Law and Order. I would say I had one little scene or something like that. And then you're already trying to almost dismiss your accomplishments because that person who doesn't know anything about acting is going to be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I want to go watch the episode. Which one is it? And then you're like, I don't want them to sit through an entire 1 hour episode to see me for 3 seconds. It's just awkward. I don't want to make anyone watch stuff that you're in. And then they're sometimes you're not always proud of that work. And then so I think actor is just a no. I wouldn't say that right away. I usually used to say whatever my day job was. If when I was doing marketing, and Gaia is so new that I haven't said I'm a photographer yet or I own my own business. But I'm excited to say that because that feels really, I don't know, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that is so true. Just this feeling of having to kind of hide the creative endeavor just to relieve yourself of trying to define it. That's kind of why I wanted to talk to you, because you've always done this really, and we've known each other for a long time, just for some background. We've known each other for a long time. I think we met when, right after you first moved to New York, and we were paired up in a scene study class. And I think I realized pretty quickly that you were always able to make it work in the sense of you were always able to make rent. You were always able to find a job. You were always finding a really good acting class. And you came to New York with an acting manager, which completely blew my mind. And I think that, at least from my perspective and having known you for a long time, you were always able to create this kind of sense of security for yourself. And I'm wondering, where did that ability come from?
Being an immigrant.
Yeah.
For sure. I think there's a certain kind of grit. There's a certain kind of survivor's mindset that you can't give that to somebody. They just have to have gone through some of the things that a lot of immigrants have gone through or children of immigrants. And I'm not saying that to say that I'm proud of it. The fact that I know I will always survive. I will always be okay. I know that because that's trauma, baby. I've been through, it's like I earn that, but then I also, the downside to it is there's a lot of trauma behind becoming this like survivor. And I think during COVID, I saw how it's a good thing and also how it's takes a toll on you in a way that you don't realize it right away. My husband and I, as Mike, he had a very traditional upbringing. He grew up in the suburbs, a child of 2 Italian Americans who were third generation. So their parents had that kind of immigrant mindset, or their grandparents, but they themselves had a pretty stable childhood. And he grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey and New York area. His parents are still together, like been together for 40-something years. They went to the same school. Like they moved once, like to another county, like minutes away. But for the most part, like they lived in the same town all of their lives. And so I think he has like this very traditional American family. And like they hadn't really gone through anything crazy. None of them have like had a drug problem or a drinking problem or like gone to rehab. Like, because the kids from the suburbs, they have their own kind of problems too. And they didn't get into any of that stuff either. And so somebody who had gone through a lot, we both had very different relationships to the rug getting pulled out from under us during COVID. Oh, yeah. And basically when, like, I think about like 2 weeks into lockdown, we realized that we were going to have a really hard time living in our little tiny New York apartment and not going crazy, because it was when New York was like the hub, the first, not the hub, what is it that they would call it? Not
yeah, like
spot, but
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it was like when it was just New York, like all the other states hadn't really felt it yet. It was like Italy became a hotspot and then New York became a hotspot. And so we were really in this state of like, what do we do? What's going on? Like we were so afraid of going to the deli because I felt like I was going to walk by someone on the sidewalk. And even though they were like 5 feet away, we were outside and they didn't sneeze or cough. I was like, oh my God, that person was so close to me. Like, yeah. So we decided to flee New York. So we're not real New Yorkers, because a lot of people are like, you're not a real New Yorker if you don't stick through. We left and we went to Florida. And that day where we were packing up, I started packing up like our birth certificates, our passports, like all of our important documents. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, we're going to go back to work in 2 weeks. Like, I have to come back. Like, you're packing like you're leaving. And I was like, babe, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, I'm ready to maybe leave and not come back. And I was very calm about it. I was just like, yep, like I'm packing up my life. Like, we're going, we're leaving. And he was like a mess thinking about the idea of packing up his life like overnight and thinking about maybe just running away. But I had to run away. Like when I first came to the US, it was overnight. My parents were like, it's a longer story, but we were fleeing something. And it was just like overnight like that. And so I felt like I had already done that and I was able to go through that. And
so like it was almost kind of like a muscle memory kind of reflex. Yeah.
And I just like, I know that I'll be okay. And I was very calm in this crisis situation. And like 3 months into our time in Florida, I was like, we have to get rid of our New York apartment. It doesn't make sense to be paying rent there and living here. Let's go. Let's move out. Let's get rid of it. It took him like months because he's like, oh, we're going to go back to it. We're going to go back to it. I'm like, we're not. It's not happening. Like this COVID thing's going to go for a long time. We're going to be in Florida for a long time. And I still had to convince him. And so I like have this detachment to stuff, detachment to a lot of things. Like I'm ready to go. Like I'm ready to pack my bag and like move on. If it was like Handmaid's Tale, I would just be like, all right, we're getting in our car, we're going. And so it seems like it's a good thing, but it's not. That's not normal. And I feel the effects of it months later. I probably had my breakdown 6 months after he had his. And it's still the same. Maybe I seem calmer. I seem like I can just start over and do a new thing. So when I moved to New York, like I hustled. Like most actors are sitting there, oh, what do I do? I'm like, nope, like I'm not going to be starving. I'm not going to be this. I want to take this class. I want to do that. That kind of hustler mindset, I think, is that grit and resilience you were talking about. But I do just want to like caveat it with, I don't think it's always the healthiest thing.
I think it's so interesting, just the concept of attachment. And I think you called it detachment, but I mean, there's a whole, and you know this, but like there's a whole Buddhist philosophy of non-attachment. So there is something to be said that everything is temporary. And you seem to kind of grasp that at a really early age just because you had to. And I mean, I guess the ramifications can be negative, but it also set you up to succeed in many ways in New York. And so I think the need for security also seem to come from this sense of fleeing almost. Like, and we live together, so I like have seen this like very intimately. But not only like the first thing that I realized quickly about you was that you were always able to make it work, but that your home, you were always very specific about having a home to be in. And I'm wondering, did that stem from this idea of needing to have that security when you didn't at some point? And like, where did that kind of fit in to coming to New York and trying to make it work?
What do you mean a home to be in?
Like your home in Brooklyn, like you like made it really nice and it was like a home. And our apartment, you were like, we're going to paint the walls this color and we're going to hang. Like I would just like throw shit on the walls and you were like, no, it's going to be like very curated. And I just wonder like where that like need for a home base came from. And I'm going to venture a guess and say maybe it happened to be something to do with coming to the US and all of that. And really what I'm getting at is the sense of security in relation to the very unstable career path of a creative and how they kind of work together. And is that something that you kind of subconsciously created for yourself because of going after an unstable career, or maybe not? Maybe I'm totally off base, but how does that resonate with you?
I hadn't really thought about it until now. So that's a really good question. And I think maybe in some ways, because I have this calling for a very unstable, unpredictable career, I've tried to create so much stability surrounding that in my life. Mm-hmm. And I felt like as I struggle with attention challenges and focus and procrastination. And so I really thrive like in very structured environments. And I know that I need to create that for myself. And so sometimes I felt like as an artist, I needed to almost have like a soldier's like mindset about it. Otherwise, I would just be meandering. Mm-hmm. And I needed to be like, okay, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do this at this time. And I'm going to have a home to come home to that's very like traditional. And I don't know, like I still needed to have my time to do the normal things that people would do. Like I couldn't have this sort of bohemian type of lifestyle. Like I still knew that I wanted a family and I wanted to get married and I wanted to have kids and I wanted all the things. I also think some of this stuff is idealized from, again, being an immigrant, and you watch all of these movies and you grew up kind of like dreaming of this like white picket fence and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so my mom had that same thing too. Like when I describe my hometown in Central Florida, I describe it as like a shit town. And I feel bad saying that because that's what my parents gave me and they worked so hard to give this upbringing. But like, it's very empty. There's not much going on there because it's such a small town. There's really not much going on. And so people get into things that you only get into in like rural areas where like the opioid epidemic is very overpowers a community. Like it's kind of that vibe where it's just so mm-hmm. quiet and boring and plain and stuff. But my mom, when she came to America and saw houses that all looked the same. Like, I think that's basic, but she saw that and was like, oh my God, little houses and they all look the same. Mm-hmm. Houses that are like very far apart and just like, oh, the kids, so much area to like play or whatever, because that was so opposite of what she grew up with. So I think I also have idealized like all of these things that you're supposed to have. And I wanted all of those too. And I almost felt like that was in like a state of tension with my artistic pursuits, because there was like this part of me that dreamt of that my whole life, but then there was this other part of me that was in the arts and stuff.
Yeah. So how did that need influence your feelings towards like what you wanted to do with your life? Like when you were a kid, how did that need for wanting that traditional husband and kids and all of that, how did that influence your kind of vision of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I think before I've discovered that acting was a thing that somebody could pursue, wasn't even a question. Creativity and like a performing arts career or anything like that wasn't a question. So I didn't really think about it at all. I just thought that I would have like a regular job. The movies that I would watch that I would romanticize growing up were all these like rom-coms where the lead character worked at a magazine.
Oh my gosh. Wait, what one? What movie? I think I know what movie you're
thinking of. Like 10 things.
How to lose a guy in 10 days.
How to lose a guy in 10 days.
I knew, like, as soon as you said magazine, I was like, she's talking about how to lose a guy in 10 days.
Just like all of them, like, I feel like the person always works like in PR, like plans events. Oh, 13 going on 30, she worked in PR in New York. And then even like stepmom, Julia Roberts, was a photographer. So kind of doing that thing now.
Okay.
But, you know, it was always like they worked in media and they worked in New York and they were so cool. And so I think growing up, I grew up as a dancer. So I thought I wanted to be a dancer professionally. And I really believed that would happen. And it was during a time where Missy Elliott had all these kids in her dance music videos. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be one of those kids. I also grew up near Disney. So I would see like performers all the time. And a lot of people that did dance in Central Florida, they would go on to work at Disney. So I thought like, oh, I'll work in Disney or I'll work in music videos. And this was like the height of MTV. So I'm 33. So this was like early 2000s. I would watch TRL when I would come home from school and you would just consume music videos all the time. And they were always pop artists were really good dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it wasn't like now where pop artists don't necessarily have, like they can't like act, dancing, all the things. It was like Britney. And so, yeah. So I thought that I wanted to be a dancer. I think eventually when I was in high school, I realized that I wasn't good enough to do it professionally because there were a lot of my peers would win dance competitions and I didn't. And dance is something that has to be in your body since you're like really young. And I started at 11. They started at 3. So I realized at that point, like, I'm never going to get those years back. I'm never going to get to that point. So I still dance for fun, but I didn't think that was going to be a dream anymore. And then watching those movies, I was like, oh, maybe I'll like go to college and like major in PR.
Okay.
So that was sort of like my first idea. And I thought like, oh, I'll definitely have a family and all of that with that. Then I went to a performing arts camp when I was a teenager and I didn't make the cut to do a dance performance at the end of the workshop. So I had to do a monologue. And that's when I first got the bug of acting. And when I moved to New York at 19, I worked for that same performing arts camp and I met all these actors and I was like, oh, this is like a thing that people can pursue. And I remember loving acting when I did some at the workshop. And I decided like just a few months into living in New York that when I moved up here to work at that camp that I wanted to be an actor. Sorry, this is kind of convoluted.
No, it's good.
Basically, it's good. Okay. It's just so much. I'm like trying to explain it. So then once I got that in my mind, I really believed that it would only take me like a couple of years to become successful.
That's amazing.
I thought that the marriage and the kids and all that stuff would happen because I saw all these professional actors that were like the 1% have a family and kids and all that stuff after they killed it in their career, like in their 20s. And this was the year that like Jennifer Lawrence just kind of came out of nowhere when we were in New York and she had done Winter's Bone. And I thought I was so good. Like, I think it's
oh my gosh,
like
the naivete of like the early 20s is so amazing. And I love that you were just so positive and confident in like, it's gonna work and I'm amazing. I mean, wow. Okay. Where did that come from? Like, where did that optimism and confidence come from?
Oh my gosh, just complete ignorance. Like I was like, oh, I'll be like Jennifer Lawrence in 3 years and I'll like do a whole bunch of movies in my 20s and then in my 30s I'll settle down and have kids. And
But I mean, did you have any like a coach or a teacher or someone like a mentor of any sort that really reinstated this feeling of or supported this feeling of confidence and giving you like some kind of cheerleader in your life, or was it totally innate within you?
I think it's a little bit of innate. I think we're all kind of born with that. Now, I'm sure you feel this too. Watching a child grow up, you realize how many things we come with and then the world takes away from us.
Oh like my God.
I know. Sorry.
Jesus, rip my heart out. It's so true though.
Yeah, it is. It's just like, and there's a Picasso quote that's like, the artist is a child that survived or something like that. I forget what, sorry, I don't want to fuck this up because it's Picasso. So let me look this up. God forbid. Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. So I think part of it was innate. And I watch my kid and he walks down the street and he says hello to everyone. He like learned how to say hello and he learned how to wave. And so he walks down the streets of Brooklyn and goes,
oh my gosh.
to every single person and to inanimate objects and to dogs. And 50% of those people don't say hello back. I think part of it is that he says hello in a weird way. Like he almost says like, oh, like, oh. Like, so maybe they don't like actually hear hello. Or people are just so in their own worlds, like on their phones, on their headphones, that maybe they kind of heard it, but they didn't turn around to like connect it to somebody. They didn't think it was to them. And I'm afraid that he's going to see these people not saying hello back and think that it's weird or think that it's like not something you do. And so I make a point to also say hello to that person so that he knows that's correct, that you can say hello to people walking down the street. And then when the people see the adults saying hello to them, first they're like, it's New York. So they're always thinking like, is this person going to like attack me or try to sell me green peace? So I think at first they're like, and then they realize that it's just a baby and a mom saying hello. And they're like, hey, some of them are nicer. Some of them are just kind of like, but I really don't want him to lose that like innate joy and like kind of curiosity about other people and wanting to be friendly. And I think a lot of us are born with a similar thing, but like in an artistic way, where we're really excited about the world around us and we are curious and we're making connections and we're having opinions and a point of view, because that's all it is really. Art is like, what's your point of view on the world, right? Through this medium. And we're building that point of view through that unique way that we see the world. And then people conform and like they tell us that this is the only way to see the world. And I think that's the artist dying inside of you. Or it's not okay to be free and express yourself in whatever way because it's not polite. It's not socialized. It's not okay for a woman to do that or a man to do it, whatever. And so I think that I somehow kept a little bit of that because I've always been like a very, I guess, how would you say, like impulsive person. Like I have all these really bad tattoos from when I was like 17, because one day I was like, oh, I just want that. And then I went and got it. I don't know. So I think I've always been very impulsive. So I almost like didn't have time to like second guess myself or think about what will people think of me. I would just do things. And so it came across as confident because I didn't second guess myself, but it's really like my brain didn't have time.
Didn't go there.
Which is like the attention challenge thing where it's like you have like no impulse control. So
right.
I'm connecting now, but
good.
The moment, one day I'll get there. But the moment I was like, I would just do things and it seemed confident, but I just think it was like erratic. And then I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. And I'll like work out. And I'm not thinking through all of the obstacles and other things that could get in the way. So part of it is that I think innate creativity that didn't quite die in me. And then the impulsiveness kind of seen as like confidence and spontaneity. And then also the ignorance of just being young and not realizing how many obstacles. And then I really think like, speaking of point of view in the world, the last thing I'll say about that is that I just had such a huge passion for arts, and it started with dance, that I became like really obsessed and tunnel vision about it, that I don't think that I really allowed another perspective to come, like, or to think about the how and how you make this work, how you become a professional. I was just really obsessed with the craft. Like I would practice and practice in my room. And I think sometimes that's necessary. Like you almost have to, there's another Andy Warhol quote. Sorry, I'm obsessed with quotes.
No, I love it.
There's another Andy Warhol quote that says, don't think about making art, just get it done. Let everyone else decide if it's good or bad, whether you love it or hate it. While they are deciding, make even more art.
Oh, I love that.
So I think I just was like doing it. And I was on to the next thing before I could even second guess, what is this? Like, how do I make money off of this? Or how do I make a profession out of this? I was just like doing it. And so that kind of obsession about a thing, which I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I know a lot of professional athletes have that mindset. They're just like obsessive people. I have that. I have like that same kind of, if I get really into something, I just go into this rabbit hole and deep dive. And I think sometimes when you're in that tunnel, you just really, you can't even think about, like the consequences or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think it's Napoleon Hill, and it's the Think and Grow Rich book, which is like a big...
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and he talks about that. Like, you have to be obsessed with what you're doing. Like that's, and I'm going to botch like the whole concept of it, but he talks a lot about obsession as opposed to just doing it for the sake of XYZ. So that's really interesting that you actually use the word obsession, because it's like a very specific type of passion where it's like oxygen. Like you just can't imagine your life without it. So I'm wondering, so you had your first spark towards this creative journey came from dance, and then it kind of gave way to acting. So with all of these creative endeavors that you were pursuing in your early 20s after you came to New York, eventually, I guess I'm wondering, when did reality set in, when you were like, oh, maybe like I'm starting to see the big picture. I'm starting to see like Jennifer Lawrence is one in a million. Like Rosario Dawson discovered on her stoop in Brooklyn. Like doesn't happen to everybody. Like when did that realization come and how did it affect you?
First, I felt like I was broken down creatively and I realized that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And then I started
Oh my gosh, wait. So how did that feel? I mean, like what happened like in your body when that realization, like, do you remember where you were when you had that realization? Was it kind of a gradual thing or tell me about that?
You were there. And I don't want to shit talk the person who broke me down, but
it's okay. We're not going to name names, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's just going to be obvious who we're talking about, but it's fine.
It's okay.
We were in an acting class and I saw you on stage before we met in the showcase. And I thought you were so amazing and everybody else was so amazing. And that's what made me want to join the class. I was really inspired and I decided to join that class. I was between joining that and joining like an acting method class where they would teach a specific process. But I saw you guys' work and I was like, oh my God, I need to be with these people. And that was wrong. I had never taken an acting technique class. And that was a scene study class where you just put up scenes and you get some directorial feedback. No one should start out with a scene study class because somebody needs to teach you, like, when you read a script, this is what you do. Like, first, you figure out what your objective is, what your actions are, you make all those things exist for you and make them real for you. Like, there's a process. You don't just jump to, like, pretending like you're there.
Like a foundation. So, you missed the foundation class.
Totally.
Yeah.
And this person was running a business and I had an interview / audition with him and he knew that I had never taken an acting class and he knew that I was between that and something else. And he shit talked the other thing and was like, oh, that stuff is weird. And like in here, we do this kind of stuff and that kind of stuff. And you did do like some warm up and improv and stuff, but he wasn't teaching a technique. He was just like, you're putting up work. It's like a gym, like you're practicing. You already have a process because I'm not teaching you a process. So I think what broke me down was that I was sort of faking something because I didn't have a process. And so, of course, it's not going to be as good. Like if I pick up a scene and just memorize the lines and then do my scene with somebody and pretend like I'm feeling things I'm not feeling or pretend like I'm embodying a characteristic that I didn't actually figure out how to get in my body authentically, I'm going to fake it. And I think I felt that I was faking it and I felt very not confident about the work, but I thought it was just because I wasn't talented. I didn't realize that I just didn't have a process or a how to bring this stuff to life and that people go to conservatory and like take a voice class and take a scene study class or take a script analysis class and deal with instrumental things and like all of that. And so I think that confidence and those nerves came across and the teacher didn't know what to do with them. I equate him with like a football coach style where I felt like he had a very masculine energy about him and he kind of oversimplified teaching terms and teaching and like he had like very oversimplified teaching style where it was like, I think he told you something that still stays with me because I've done this scene a few times. You were playing a character that was tougher and he just kept telling you, Courtney, you can't act like a bitch. You got to just be the bitch.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
Which means nothing. Like you're telling me just basically be an authentic bitch. Like, how do I create this? How do I find the bitch in me? How do I create that? He would not say how. He just kept being like, just be the bitch.
Right.
It's like, okay, like, let me just like.
Right. Yeah. Like he wasn't giving any kind of context on how to create that within and like how to start to cultivate a process towards being the bitch, right?
Yeah. The bitch is essentially just like a character, right? An archetype. If this was like a real person you were playing and somebody told Daniel Day-Lewis, don't act like Lincoln, just be Lincoln.
Right.
I'm sorry. Yeah, of course I'm going to try to be that thing and like be as close as possible to like an audience member being able to completely forget that it's Daniel Day-Lewis and it's fucking Lincoln, whatever. Like everybody wants to have that kind of performance that just feels like you are that person. How the hell do you create that? There's a million acting methods out there trying to figure out how to tell you to do that. This guy just kept telling you. And he said it like it was like this revolutionary thing too sometimes. Like he'd be like, yeah, you got to just be the bitch. So I think he confused the shit out of me and it made me feel like my work wasn't good. And I was I started to become less confident about it. I could feel in my body that it just wasn't good. And he kept confusing me with his notes. He also made me really self-conscious about artistic choices that I made. One time I came in with this outfit that I thought my character would wear. And I had very high heels. And the style at the time were like those heels were like you put a platform at the top of it. Do you know what I'm talking about? And so I wore those and I thought they were just cool. They were like these like knockoff Louboutin type of shoes where it was like a patent leather cream pump and it had front platform. And I think I probably looked a little ridiculous to be wearing shoes that high all of a sudden in class when I would wear like sweats or something. But, you know, like that was like the artist in me. Like I was making a choice and maybe it was a choice that went a little bit too far. Maybe it was bold. Maybe it was wrong for the character, whatever that is. Everybody has their own interpretation. But I sat there and in front of the entire class, he goes, "What's with the shoes?" And I was like, this is just what I thought. Like I got really, really shy about it. And he goes, I don't know. I don't know about those shoes for her. And it was like that simple. Like maybe to somebody else, they'd be like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. Like I'll try new shoes that time because I was so new and I was already starting to get in my head about whether I was good or not, whether I knew what I was doing and how come everybody else in this class seems to be getting his weird notes and I can't. I felt so ashamed. Like the way everybody was looking at me when he said, "What's up with the shoes?" Like he was making fun of my outfit.
Like a public flogging, kind of.
Yeah, I felt like I was being publicly shamed about my outfit in front of a whole bunch of people that were my peers. Not only were they my peers, I felt younger, newer than everybody. So I already kind of felt insecure. And I think it took me like 5 years to not overthink my outfit in an acting class when I was creating a character. Maybe that's ultra sensitive. Maybe that had nothing to do with him and it was my own thing. I don't know what it was. But till this day, like I'm going to acting class and I'm doing a scene and it's at that point in the scene where one would come in with props and like costume and like everything. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, no, this is wrong for her. This is too much. This is too much. I'm going to be laughed at. I'm going to be mocked. He's going to say something. So stuff like that started to get to me. And that was mostly just a teacher that just wasn't the right fit for my personality and where I was at in my greenness. And also just jumping into like almost like a professional scene study class when I had no business of being there.
Yeah. So with the kind of like breakdown that we were talking about, after that moment, you go home, then what? Did you ever second guess this passion and this obsession? And where did that bring you in your mental vision of your career? And what did you do the next day?
I think the first time that our scene went horribly, I cried a lot that night. And I remember trying to call my manager and cry to her. I didn't even know that was like a thing you didn't do. Like imagine an agent getting a call after an acting class scene goes.
I think managers might get that more than an agent, but that manager also could put you in touch with this teacher. So that kind of did make sense. But I'm also wondering like, okay, so creatives are typically much more sensitive than those who choose non-creative jobs. Artists tend to be more sensitive. New York is not an easy place and you were young. I guess I'm wondering, at what point were you like, okay, maybe I'm not that good. And so you already went through that. You're like, maybe I'm not that good. What do I do now? And you're bartending and you end up leaving that class and going to another class. When did you find yourself in your first day job?
So I got kicked out of that class because he also ran like these casting director workshops and agent meet and greets. And he would constantly call us to try to sell us these like services on the weekend and like put pressure on us to, oh, you've got to meet this agent. You've got to meet this agent. Come on. Like, what are you doing for your career? And like shame you into booking these like meet and greets and these other classes. And I would do some of them and I was just getting tired. It was like, I think I was in the class for like a year or so. And I was like doing all of them and he would constantly be guilting me into doing them. And then one time I went to one and I think I was just mentally checked out. I wasn't ready. I hadn't done my hair. I hadn't done makeup. And I was in the bathroom like doing it. And it was my slot coming up. Like I think there was like these like little 20-minute slots to meet somebody. And he came and was like, where are you? You're late. Like you need to be in here. And I was like, I'm getting ready. And he was like, you know what? You got to go. Like get out of here. And I remember like I met you at the coffee shop afterwards and I was like crying.
Because I think I had gone and then I was like, just come meet me after, like we'll go out.
So I got kicked out of the studio, because I was going to be late to this one of these like meet and greets, not related to the class, but I just got kicked out of the studio as a whole so that I wouldn't be part of the class. And he had a reputation for being a very explosive person. Like a couple of people that we knew talked about how he just lost on them, like screamed, cursed, like threw shit in front of. So this guy had a temper and he just like lost it one day on me and was like, get the fuck out of here, basically. And like, I couldn't even finish straightening my hair. He was like, get out now. Out, like, when I say kicked me out, like he was close to like grabbing me by the arm and throwing me outside. This like fucking 40-year-old man. And I was like 20. Yeah, he was really raising his voice to a point where I felt like if I didn't immediately grab myself, like my straightener was still hot and I was like holding it and like running because I felt like he was gonna like in like a movie where like the bouncer, all of a sudden you see like a scene and the bouncer
This like 100-pound girl. Like
just getting thrown out of a bar because she's too drunk. Like it was like that bad. So I was really upset. But like I said before, like I've always been in this mindset of just like pick yourself up by the bootstraps, keep going. So I think I always like let myself cry about things for like a day or two. And then I'm like, all right, get your life together. Like I just kind of bully myself into like keep going. But for a while, I got really overwhelmed with the making the rent stuff. So I was working at restaurants and I had multiple jobs and I was always exhausted. I found another acting class that built up my confidence so much. And the teacher was extremely nurturing. And I remember I did something and he was like, wow, Aixa, you would just be like a director's dream because you have no blocks about going somewhere. Like, because I was like sobbing about something, I don't know. Like, and it was just, I kind of started to feel like, oh my gosh, all the trauma in my life I can just put into this thing and like it can be for something. Like I think I always felt like the life of an artist gave meaning to all the bad shit in your life. And the life of a non-artist, you had to suppress all the bad shit. And I knew that I couldn't survive suppressing all the things that I had gone through. So I knew that I needed to put it into something to make it meaningful. Like, I don't know, like I just felt like, oh, if I can use this horrible thing that happened to me to make this other thing come to life, this character, this play, this world, it was like a way of me spinning things into positive because I don't think that I could accept that sometimes life just sucks. And so I think that class made me really excited because I was putting all of this stuff into something. I was making meaning from my life. It felt like a positive thing. And
you were being supported. There was,
I was being
supported for the first time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there was a lot of downside, which is why I eventually left that class because it focused a little bit too much on what people call the instrument and not enough on like the text and the script. And it was a lot of feeling and emotion and things, which I think is one part of acting, but only one small part. But I didn't know that at the time. And I was kind of getting off on it and I was treating it like therapy.
Okay. So with all of that behind you and you put in all this time, you said that you were getting overwhelmed with the restaurant industry. You eventually started working in corporate America, specifically in a hedge fund. I think you were an executive assistant for a while. Then you kind of forayed into marketing and you were a marketing professional at Reebok. So this was your survival job. And I don't know, like most people would be like, oh, wow, like I'm on this great, secure career path. I'm going to put all my creative stuff to the side. But you were doing all of that. I mean, you were auditioning for roles on TV shows like Homeland and Law and Order. And then you started to go to Columbia and you were completing this degree in creative writing, which we're going to talk about. Like I had this, so we were living together and we lived in this tiny ass apartment and we were sharing a closet and you were like, I have an audition later. You were like in your corporate getup and came running in like 5 minutes before your work started. And you were like, I'm going to an audition to play a runner and can I borrow something? Like, what do runners wear? And I think I was like, oh my God, of course. And I like threw this, I remember it was this purple zip up like lycra thing. And you were like, okay, great. And it was just so funny. And I was like, what is she doing? Like, how is she going to an office job and somehow got auditions fitting into your schedule in such a way that either your bosses had no idea what you were doing or your bosses were cool with it? So how did you do that? I think a lot of artists and actors specifically, I mean, there's a whole thing about actors being your server and your bartender, blah, blah, blah. And it's because there's a flexible schedule at restaurants and what pushed you towards corporate? And then where did your marketing start to form in that journey?
Okay, this is a big one. So I'm going to go part by part.
Okay.
My first audition ever was for a commercial, and there was this girl there that was like, I got to run because I got to get back to my desk. And I was like, where are you going? And she goes, oh, I'm a receptionist. And I was like, wait, what? You're like a receptionist and you're here? How did you get away? And she was like, oh, no, I refuse to be a waitress. It's soul sucking. I am a receptionist and I take all my lunch breaks during my auditions. And it's an hour. And so it usually gives me enough time to get anywhere. And she said, and if it's something that's really far, or I know it's going to take a while, I just tell them I have a doctor's appointment. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I feel like that planted a seed in my head and it stayed there for years. Everything in my life, every job I've had, I've pretty much been fired or laid off from, which is horrible to admit. Sounds like I can't keep a job, but I swear I'm a really good employee. So most of the time it has to do with being late. And like, I'm good at my job. I'm just not always good at things that you have to do to like keep a job. I have like a lot of attention challenges. I told you I have time blindness. These are all things that I know now. At the time, I just was like confused as to why I was late all the time. And I have a really hard time. I lose track of myself a lot and I disassociate. And I think I have an hour to do something. Before you know it, I like did all these other things, whatever. You could basically say I have AD, but I'm not medicated for a lot of reasons that I'm still trying to navigate and figure out. Basically, I would be late to a lot of things. I lost a lot of jobs that way. And then one job, which is the one that pushed me into corporate America, I lost for partially being late. I was on call for a shift. They were supposed to call you if they needed you, and nobody called me until the manager called me, was like, where are you? You're supposed to be here. And I was like, no, I'm on call. You're supposed to call me. And they're like, no, you're on the schedule for 12 o'clock. And I showed up and I hadn't eaten and I started eating lunch behind the bar. And then he was like, you're not supposed to have food behind the bar, when like everybody does it. And then a few minutes later, he was like, you're fired. That is like one of the many things in my life where it's like one thing doesn't work out and it always ends up being like way better. I was at home and I was just looking on Craigslist and I was looking at first restaurants, and then I was like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. And then I looked in the like office and there was a recruitment agency that had posted a receptionist job. And then that girl's story came to mind and I was like, I could still audition maybe. Like maybe I could say I was in a doctor's appointment. I could take a break. And I started interviewing for receptionist jobs, more like temp to hire because I had no experience. And eventually I got one at a hedge fund that at the time only had like 20 employees. And I was a temp. And a few months later, they made me permanent. And within a few years, they like grew to like 45 employees. And we got this big fancy office. And their AUM, which is like assets under management, was like initially like 1 billion. And then it ended up being 40 billion or something in like a few years. Like it just blew up because the guy that started it, he would have been like a big character on like The Big Short. Like he was one of the people that was very instrumental in Goldman Sachs making all the money that they did during the crash. And so they call him like the golden boy of finance. And that was my boss. I was his assistant. And because it just kind of, he had the right PR behind him and he started his own hedge fund after the crash, he got a lot of attention and he grew really fast. And I became an office manager and I had a job that would be way too big for somebody who had no experience in a 9-to-5 or office, like a traditional administrative office role. Executive assistants and office managers of asset firms make a lot of money and it's like a really legit job. So yeah, so that was how I ended up there. And then I decided to go back to school, and I didn't get fired from that job.
I was going to say, so that's an important point though. So you were there for a couple of years and this guy, your boss, really saw potential in you and wanted to kind of groom you. So that's pretty nice offer. How were you able to turn that down? And what made you so dedicated to not only like continuing acting, but then like going to get your degree in something also creative when you had this really nice kind of almost like a life offer set up? It wasn't even like a job offer.
No, it was people go to get a degree in economics. They intern for free work, like investment banks. Like they do a lot of work to work in in investor relations. This guy was literally handing me a book and was like, you're great, you're smart, we like you, you're personable, we would like you to grow with us. And even after I quit there and I finished college and I started interviewing for jobs again, I was kind of lured into that world and I interviewed for another hedge fund and for like an EA, an executive assistant position. And during the interview, they were like, you would be great at investor relations. Like, it was so weird. It was like it kept calling me.
But so why did you keep saying no to that? This is one thing that I want to touch on really quickly is for anyone listening who is a creative and is sick of working in restaurants, temp jobs are great. And a lot of the time they do. So I'm an ex-executive recruiter, and I can tell you that a lot of temp jobs are temp to hire. So while they might seem really menial, they're really great and short little stints. They can actually turn into a full-time job. So you were able to see that and go for it and try something new. Also, I think that there's something to be said just looking at where you have been successful. It was the first time that you've really felt like good about acting and your talent and all of that, other than the naivete moment, was when you had a coach that really, or a teacher that really believed in you. And the second time, like the only time that you didn't really get fired from a job was when your boss like really believed in you and saw your potential. And then you quit. Yeah. And then you went on this other interview and these other people were like, yeah, no, he was right. You would be really great at this. So like, why did you push that away?
I think I really believe in this dream that I have still, and to a detriment, like to the point where like I know everybody in my family thinks I'm crazy, and that's okay, because somebody once told me, a writing teacher, I was asking her about good day jobs. I was like, oh, do you have any ideas for like a good day job? Like I'm always trying to think of different ways to make money as an actor. And she was like, oh, I've heard like nursing is like 3 days a week. Maybe like that could be something because then you have 4 days off. And she was just kind of like spitballing. And I was like, that sounds horrible. Like to be a nurse, but you're not really a nurse.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't think I'm like a good person to ask. And then she mentioned something else. And I was like, oh, I don't want to like fall back on something. I don't believe in like having a fallback plan. And she was like, no, I don't believe in that either. I believe in an A track and a B track. And you can have an A track where it's like this one career that you're focusing part of your time in, but like never let go of like the B track or whatever, the other track. That's your dream. And I think you take your dream to your grave. And I really like just that stuck with me and thought like, if this is really something that I feel is my calling, like I'm taking that to my grave, because I think that the people that try to kill somebody's dream, like you're killing just their soul. Like we wake up every day. I believe we wake up every day, like for our children. I think like I can't have anything bad happen to me because I have a kid. Like I think twice before I cross the street, like I have to live for this kid. The other reason why I wake up is because I'm excited about the potential of my life and my career. And I'm like working towards something. I think that keeps you like alive. Like I think it just keeps you going. And to kill that in somebody, I think that's horrible. So like she was like, I would never tell anyone to stop pursuing something. Like you take that to your grave. And I think that's still in me, like this excitement about my potential, my future. And I just don't ever want to give up on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you had this kind of unique ability to carve out a creative life while working in corporate America that a lot of people don't realize is something you can do. And like you just said, like have like a B track going while you're still pursuing the A track. You're not giving up on anything. You're just kind of creating a space where you can go after the creative dream while not having something else kill your soul. Like bartending, not to shit on bartending because whatever, but it's great. Lots of people do it and lots of people love it. But there's also something to be said, and I'd be interested to know what you think, that when you're in a job that's completely out of alignment with what you want to do, whether it's just to make money or it's your full-time job, that is going to take a toll on your creative self and your creative potential, because you're literally putting yourself in a space of negativity and of low vibe, low energy that is absolutely going to have an effect on how you create and how you bring yourself to your creativity. Did you feel that ever, like when you were working in a job that you hate, one of the jobs that you got fired from? Like, how did that affect your creative endeavors? And on the opposite side, when you were working at the hedge fund, did you see like an uptick in your creative life or not?
My manager said to me, she was like, some clients, their life can't work out until their career works out. And some of them, their career won't work out until their life works out. And that was something that really also stayed with me, because I felt like I was in the latter. Like I was, the life needs to work out for the career to work out. Because for me, there's this notion of like this starving artist, this like traumatized artist where it's like just their personal life is chaos and their art is brilliant, and like the brilliance fuels from the chaos and there's no art without the chaos, and like that whole thing, that just that's not something that worked out in my life. Like when my life was chaos, I had no energy, no time, no motivation, no inspiration to put into my work. So I learned that about myself, that when my house is clean and my laundry's done and I've worked out and I've eaten well and I've organized my day, I'm like, yes, let me go work on this like script that I need to tape an audition for. And when I'm burnt out, I'm just like throwing it together the last minute and being like, oh, fuck, this is just going to make me look horrible to this casting director. And this is embarrassing. And I'm burning bridges. Like, but for some people, it's the opposite. Like they have to have that kind of tunnel vision obsession that we talked about at the beginning. And they can't date anyone and they just have to like hole up in their apartments and focus on their art. And like not until that takes off can they settle into anything that they think can take that attention away from it. So I really felt like I needed to build a financial life, that I needed to build stability, that I needed to nurture my relationship, my home, like all these things that helped me have the time and the energy and the focus to put into my craft. So these corporate jobs were giving me that. I had really good health insurance. I could take care of myself. I could do a lot of things. I could have vacation pay and like self-care fuel me, because this is the thing that all this art is going to come through. So if I'm not okay, that's not going to be as good as it can be. And for a while, I would say that worked out. And then there was always this stress to me that I was living like two lives and that I hated that. And I would lie to people in my corporate job about the fact that I was an actor, and I hated that. And so I would say that like if you find that corporate job where you can be authentic and you can, feel like you can really be yourself, or if you don't mind feeling like you're living this double life, or if you can have the self-discipline that I clearly don't have to craft out that time, because I had the time, I just wasn't crafting it, then the corporate thing I think is great. You have the stability, you have the finances to invest in the classes, the headshots, the workshops, all of the things that career's expensive to build up, just like any business.
Yeah.
And you have the stability. Like, I think it can be really great for some people. For me, like I did it for, I guess you would say it like 4 years at Reebok, 1 at an agency, a creative agency. Before that, I guess I was at the hedge fund for 2 years, but that was while I was in college. I worked at the hedge fund and then I went to school at night. And so, yeah, I would say probably like a cumulative like 8 years of my life in the corporate world trying to do my stuff on the side. I don't think it worked out that well for me. I think I lost a lot of time and years.
But on the flip side, during that time, you got married, you had your baby, you created this very secure personal life, which is nothing to bat an eye. I mean, that's like a very big accomplishment in and of itself. And it gave you the freedom to be able to do that. So it did work out to some degree, because all of those things were things that you talked about at the beginning that were really important for you and that you knew you needed. So it gave you that ability, which I think is amazing. And I love that you said that you were living like two separate lives, because as I was prepping for this, that's what I was thinking. I was like, she really was just living two completely separate lives. And that must have been like a huge strain on you. But eventually, so you're at Reebok, you end up getting laid off. You almost immediately find another really great job at a creative agency, and then you get laid off again. And I also just want to make it kind of clear for anyone, layoffs are generally, like, from a recruiter point of view, they're not anything usually to do with the actual person. It's usually corporate restructuring or budgets, less in, less out kind of thing. None of those were really your fault. After the second layoff in 1 year, were you like, what is wrong with me? Or were you like, okay, universe, like, I get it. Like, where was your head at?
So the first layoff was part of an acquisition, and it was me and 200 other people. So I did not take that one personally. And the severance package was really good. And they offered me a role with the new company, but I couldn't take my severance package. And I was like, F that. Like, I'm not gonna. They were offering me like similar role, same salary at the new company, but I couldn't get my like 4 months of cash pay at once. And I was like, I think I could find this exact same job with the same salary, or maybe even more, at another place and still be able to keep my severance. So that's what I did. They gave us a 4-week warning. And during those 4 weeks, I just hustled and interviewed like it was my full-time job. And I had my start date be like the week after my official end date. And I took all my severance money and I was like, peace out. So that one I did not take personally at all, especially when they offered me another job. my boss's boss was the one who connected me with the head of the same department at the new company. And she was like, oh, she's trying to place people. I think they were just trying to place people so they didn't have to pay out as much in the severance because you were technically still working for the same company. Part of it was that they liked me, and the other part was like trying to like
self-serving.
Yeah, not pay out as much. So did not take that one personally. This last one, I was laid off because we lost a client, which is very common in the agency world. You lose the business, the team goes, but it wasn't my client. So it was a little weird. I questioned whether that made sense. I was the newest person there along with this other guy. So sometimes it's like last one in, first one out. One of my favorite quotes is J.K. Rowling's failure speech. And at the bottom of it, she says, rock bottom was the foundation that I used to build my life.
Ugh.
I really believe that. Every time I've hit rock bottom, it almost just becomes like this undoing of all of the unnecessary shit so that I could do what I'm really supposed to do, because I didn't need to be at the restaurant world. Also, the hedge fund gave me the stability, the financial stability to invest in my life and to be able to go to school and like do all these things. And I met my husband through somebody there. So that was like supposed to happen. And then even like, we didn't talk about this, but I failed out of my first semester at college. And that's why I moved to New York, because I didn't really have anything to lose. So I just constantly feel like the scariest people in the world are the people that have nothing to lose. And like scary in a good way and scary in a bad way. Like you look at somebody who's lost everything and like they'll kill for what they need to do. Cause like,
Yeah.
who cares? Like they're like, I've got nothing. I don't really care if I go to jail. I don't like that. It's scary, like that ability. But it can also be extremely powerful. Like I have nothing to lose. I failed out of school. My parents think I'm a loser. My friends think I'm lost.
Like there's nowhere to go but up.
Nowhere to go but up. Exactly. And so I was like, I guess I'll move to New York because I know somebody there and they have a job opportunity, and maybe it's crazy, but I'm already like a shitty situation. Can it get worse? But yeah, I think that's my answer. Sorry, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, it's okay. No, yeah. I was just wondering where your head was at like during the second layoff, and how did you come to the decision to, instead of look for another job in marketing or in corporate, you came to this decision to kind of embrace this time off and refocus your energy on Gaia Studio. So now we're at Gaia Studio, which you just launched. Like, where did that decision come from? Was it like meditation, manifestation, journaling? How did you decide to just take a breather and not go back to corporate and start something totally new?
A tiny bit of background. I majored in creative writing and film. I decided to go back to school because I was taking a writing workshop, which I was supposed to take with you when I first started. And you were like, I don't know what happened. We were trying to write something together. And I was like, oh, we should join a writing class for like accountability and like support and feedback. And then you left me in the dust. And I
did. I was more, hold on. I was much more hyper-focused on acting at that point. That I think you were a lot more interested in writing and acting in tandem. And I was like super like tunnel vision on acting.
That's true. But I did put in the $25 class deposit for both of
I'll Venmo you $25. Oh my God. It was like 15 years ago.
I need interest. Okay, I'm just kidding. So my manager emailed, like a mass email. She was like, oh, this woman, was this writer on TV, and now she's got a kid and she's just working on a novel and she's teaching screenwriting classes for actors, because she was an actor too. And then it listed out like all the benefits of writing as an actor and creating your own work way before people were talking about this like they're talking about it now. And it like listed out all of these actor writers like Tina Fey and Woody Allen, and like you can't say Woody Allen anymore, but whatever. It was like all these people. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Create your own work as an actor. Like take reins over your own career. Like I want to do that. And we were working on that pilot. I wasn't trying to be a writer. I was trying to just be an actor, but I thought that this could be a good way to create my own work. So I went to that class, fell in love with writing, got the bug, and I felt like it was connected to all these things. And for a while, I wanted to get more of like a formal education in writing and film. And I was going back and forth between doing an acting program or doing the writing and the film. But at the end of the day, I felt like I could get a good acting education in like a studio. There were a lot of studios in New York teaching ongoing classes. There are not a lot of like film school, like DIY things on the side or like writing class on the side. So that's why I decided to major in that and then take acting classes on the side. And so as a graduation gift, I got a professional camera, full frame camera that you could take video with. But I love photography, so I would take some pictures here and there of my niece and my family. And I had taken a photography class as an elective because video is just really, it's moving images. You still are thinking about composition and lighting and visual storytelling. And a camera still works the same way. Like when you film something, you're still working with lenses and all that stuff. Really, the only difference is the moving aspect of it. So I thought like I want to study. I took like an art history elective. I took a photography elective, and I loved my photography elective. I still have some film that I had produced from it. And so that was always like on the side. And like I said, I've always been like the kind of jack of all trades, not because I'm trying to be good at all these things, but just because they interest me and I dabble in them here and there. And I feel like they all inform the acting and the filmmaking and the storytelling. And so I've had this camera just like collecting dust here and there. Like I pick it up back and forth every few years. And when I got pregnant, I had a maternity shoot. I had a birth photographer, videographer, and I had like a newborn shoot. I had like I hired photographers a lot. And the maternity shoot was so posed, it was so uncomfortable. And then my newborn shoot, which ended up being more like, was documentary style. And I just fell in love with these photos. I felt like they told a story. And that's ultimately all I've ever been passionate about in life is tell a story, whether it was through movement, through acting, through writing, through photography. I think storytelling is so powerful. I remember being like a little girl in Colombia and just like watching films and TV of places that I thought I would never get to be at. And it just transported me. And I only knew my world, but like through TV and film, I got to see what else was out there in the world. And I got to learn about how other people live, because it was like, it's not like a documentary. Yes, it's fiction, but like when people do it right, they're trying to really tell a story authentically. It can be incredibly powerful. And also when like universal stories are told, I think they can be so healing and moving and really make you reflect on your own life. So when I looked at these photos, I was like, this is fucking art. This is like, this photographer is so incredibly talented and she tells a story and it's very artful, it's very beautiful, but it's human. And I just thought like, she's got the coolest job ever. Like I want to be her. And she doesn't do video. And I was like, I could do like little shorts and documentaries on people if I was like that. And I could use like my filmmaker background that I studied and my storytelling background. And that could be great. And I was still in that other job, but I like kind of had this like little fantasy about having her job. And right before I got laid off, my birth photographer posted something on Instagram that said she was quitting birth photography because she was focusing on her IVF journey, and having fertility issues and filming births just was very hard on her emotionally. And I remember when I was looking for a birth photographer who also did video, I could not find one. She was like the only one. The other girl was like booked up all the time. And then she had, I think, moved upstate and also become a doula and like focusing more on the doula stuff. Even I think now when you go to her website, she's like, I'm no longer taking clients, but I'll put you in the direction. And I just thought at that point, I'm like, oh my God, there's no birth photographer or birth videographer in New York City right now. Like this is kind of a white space in the market. And I'm such a birth nerd, like so passionate about motherhood. I've always wanted to be a mom. One of my other odd jobs as an artist was always like nanny, babysitter stuff. I talked about how I always felt like I was lying about who I really was and living this double life. I just thought like, what if I could feel like I was living the life of an artist every day and making money off of something that still I was really passionate about and that was making me grow as an artist. Because when I have to decide where I'm pointing my camera, when I'm clicking that, like I'm thinking visually, I'm thinking story, I'm flexing that creative muscle. And so I think I'm growing. When I started doing some portfolio building shoots, and I just really felt like I was growing as an artist. And that's my ultimate goal, would be to be a writer, actor, director, to be doing every day, not every day, but like if I get clients and I have enough to do, to be every day, like focusing on that visual storytelling muscle and trying that. And meanwhile, doing like something that I think is really cool, which is normalize like real birth, real motherhood. Like if I'm doing a documentary style, I'm not posing anyone. I'm just kind of following them around like a fly on the wall, and I'm capturing things as they really are. And that was like really exciting to me.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting just what you're talking about, like doing something every day, like living an artistic life every single day, and how that continues to help you grow as a creative and as an artist, regardless of whether or not it's your end game or it's just something that you're doing for the time being. But waking up every morning and having this day in front of you that where you're still flexing that muscle is only going to help you grow. And I love how you recognize that you could use like your education in film and writing and storytelling for this other thing that you had just gone through and that you saw other people doing and create a business out of it. But yeah, so it's just always interesting. There's talking about quotes. There's a Steve Jobs quote. You can only connect the dots looking backward, and going forward, you just have to like trust your gut. It's something like that. And I just feel like your story is just such a great example of that. Because like looking back, there were so many little light bulbs that were going off that were kind of keeping you on the path to where you are now, which is you're really like embodying this creative and living this life that is it just seems to be very in aligned with what you're supposed to be doing.
I think so. And I just launched a couple of days ago, but I don't have any clients yet.
Yeah. What are your next steps? Yeah, like what are your next steps?
I'm taking all these like courses, like not really courses, but I'm doing like all these webinars and looking up on YouTube. And this one business coach was like, you think you have to grow before you outsource, but actually you might not be able to grow until you outsource. So I'm starting to think about how I'm spending my time. I think yesterday I spent like an hour figuring out this reel that I wanted to post on Instagram. Like I use this app to like put these photos together and post a reel on my business site. And I was like, I'm spending an hour on this. Like I really need to be like trying to figure out how to grow this business. Like this is going to take me forever. So I'm thinking that I might hire a virtual assistant like 10 hours a week or something like that and invest in doing all the tasks that I think I don't necessarily need to be doing. Someone just needs to be doing. And I want to focus on getting out there in the community with midwives and doulas. And a lot of the ways that people find their birth photographers are asking their providers if they know. If I'm focusing on birth and trying to niche myself into that, then naturally those clients will also want pregnancy shoots and maybe newborn shoots and family shoots down the line. But New York is weird because in hospitals, you're only allowed to have 2 support people and one is a partner and one is a doula. So I'm like trying to get creative and figure out how I would get into the hospital world without being a doula. Although I would love to be a doula, but I also have like major career ADD. So like I need to just focus on one thing before I do the next thing. And so I might just be able to focus on home births as a birth photographer. And then the other photography areas like maternity and family and newborn stuff, I'm focusing on the marketing stuff. The good thing is that all of this knowledge that I've gotten from working at an ad agency and working in marketing for a major brand is coming in handy. So I think that's cool is all these artists that have these odd jobs, you think it's just all this useless knowledge, but I think sometimes it really comes in handy. Like you have all.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Skills.
That's what I mean with the Steve Jobs quote. Like, I just feel like your life is like, it's so that all of these weird jobs that you had really make sense now. Like you're actually like applying so much of it. And it's just so interesting. I mean, it makes sense. It's like, of course, that's why you were doing all those things. Okay. But now this is the section of Glow State called the Afterglow. And I'm just giving you like 5 quick answer questions. Okay.
Okay, cool.
And one of them you're going to laugh at. Okay. What advice would you give your younger self? And at what age would you give that advice?
I think I would go back to that acting class. And I think I would say something like really cliched, like trust your instincts. Because if you really looked around that space, I think you would realize like he was just an actor like us, like trying to like make a living and make it work. And I don't need to put teachers like on a pedestal and take all advice as gospel. So trust your own instinct. Don't listen to other people so much.
Okay. And what is the best career advice you've ever been given?
Take your dream to your grave.
Okay. What's your favorite quote?
Oh my God.
I mean, you gave me so many good ones already, but do you have like a favorite one that you're always like, that kind of goes through your mind every now and then?
I think the J.K. Rowling's Harvard speech is amazing, but I didn't even quote the whole part that I like. The last part that I like was, it is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default.
So good. So good.
She's kind of a good writer, right?
Kind of. Okay. What is the single best daily practice that you have in your life right now and why?
I would say I'm not really that person that has like a really ideal morning routine. I've cultivated a morning routine and it comes and goes and I bring it back into my life when I feel like I need it. But oftentimes with a kid and like trying to do a million things, I'm just like going. And the only thing I really need is like coffee. But I think when I do have a morning routine, I love the idea of journaling, even if it's just like a few sentences. So I think the most important practice anybody could have is like the most old school practice, which is like pray and be like, thank you for this, thank you for that, to whoever the fuck you want to pray for. But like, I think just being really grateful for my blessings is a practice that I think if I remember to do every day, it always makes me feel so much better.
And last question, what is your go-to pump-up song for an interview or audition or like to get yourself in the creative space?
I should listen to music more. As a dancer, I feel like growing up, music was like such an instrumental part of my life. And I don't really listen to like a pump-up song before an audition. But I would say it probably would be something really ratchet because I grew up in like the ratchet part of Florida and I listened to a lot of like Southern rap and like trap and stuff growing up, or like redneck music. My karaoke song is always Redneck Woman by Gretchen Wilson. Also Pour Some Sugar on Me. Like these are songs that I think would pump me up if I did this.
Okay. All right,
cool.
an
Audition.
Okay, cool.
I think we danced to Pour Some Sugar on Me.
We did.
At a bar one time.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Like body shots.
And we're ending right now. No, okay. But thank you so much for coming on Glow State. And you can catch this when it drops and on our co-podcast, which we have not figured out a name for yet, but it's going to be great and it's going to be there too. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Glow State. Please take a moment to subscribe to the show and then be sure to share it with a friend you know who would love a little glow in their life. I'll see you next time. Now, go glow.